The school grounds buzzed with celebration, families laughing, caps in the air, flashbulbs going off like fireworks, music playing too loudly over tinny speakers. Balloons floated lazily above heads, clutched by proud parents and siblings. Students in green and gold gowns hugged each other tightly, their faces red from both heat and emotion. It was a perfect day for most. For him, it was a day he had both dreamed of and feared for 20 years. The man stood just beyond the fence that surrounded the football field, dressed in a worn-out brown jacket and faded jeans, his boots dusted from the long walk. He didn't wear sunglasses, though he probably should have. Not for the sun, but for his eyes. They gave away too much. His name was Daniel, and the boy in the cap and gown was his son. The son who had never met him. The son who thought his real father was someone else. The son who was now 20 years old, with a diploma in one hand and his arm slung proudly over the shoulders of another man. Clean-cut, confident, laughing with the crowd. Daniel watched from behind the metal bleachers, standing half in shadow. No one noticed him. He hadn't expected them to. His story had ended in official reports and folded flags long ago. Missing in action, they said. Presumed dead. For years, he truly believed he was. Somewhere in a prison cell across the ocean, time stopped mattering. His name dissolved, his hope evaporated. But he had survived. Barely. He spent years trying to return, to prove who he was, to recover a face the world had forgotten. And by the time he finally came home, the home was gone. His wife remarried. His child, just a baby when he left, had grown into a man without him. He had stood at the edge of their street for hours that first night, and never approached. He didn't want to destroy the peace they had rebuilt. But he couldn't stay away forever. Not today. Not on the day his boy was graduating. So he stood behind the chain-link fence, watching. His fingers gripped the wires, knuckles white, heart pounding like war drums. He saw the boy laugh, shake hands, take photos. Every expression was a knife and a gift at the same time. So tall, so full of life, so far away. The woman standing beside the graduate, Daniel's former wife, looked radiant, tears in her eyes. She held her husband's hand tightly, her other arm wrapped around the boy. Daniel smiled weakly, eyes burning. They looked happy. He had no place there, but he couldn't look away. Then something unexpected happened. The boy's eyes swept across the crowd. Just a glance. Scanning. Searching for someone. For a second, they landed on Daniel's face. They held there, confused, curious, a flicker of recognition that didn't make sense. Then, the boy looked away, distracted by another handshake, another photo. Daniel stepped back into the shadow of the bleachers. A single tear fell before he could stop it. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, carefully wrapped box. Inside it was a silver wristwatch, engraved on the back, "To my son, for the day you become a man. Dad." He had kept it through everything. It was meant to be given long ago. He clutched it now like a memory that had weight. The applause swelled again as the graduates tossed their caps in the air. The moment was over. The crowd began to disperse. Daniel didn't move. He watched until the boy walked out of sight. Then, slowly, he turned and began to walk the other way, watch in pocket, heart in pieces. He never said a word. He didn't need to. His presence had already said too much. Daniel hadn't meant to leave the box. He'd planned to carry it back with him like he had done so many times before. Just another day of watching from the sidelines, another moment he wasn't part of. But something about today felt heavier, more final, as if life had drawn a curtain and he was standing on the wrong side of it. He walked slowly to the parking lot across the street from the school, where the families were still hugging and loading up their cars. Laughter echoed in waves, bits and pieces of joy, falling around him like glass he couldn't touch. He sat on a cold bench by the sidewalk, back hunched, elbows on knees, holding the small box in both hands. The name of his son, Michael, was engraved into the side of the box, carefully carved long ago when Daniel had still believed he'd come back in time. He traced the letters with his thumb like a prayer. Maybe, he thought, it wasn't too late to leave something, not to interrupt, not to ruin anything, just to leave a sign. He crossed the road and approached the cluster of cars where graduates and their families were still gathered. He saw them again, his son, Michael, laughing with his friends, the proud mother standing nearby. Daniel's eyes rested on her face for a moment. She looked tired, in a beautiful, peaceful way. She had aged gracefully, her smile slower now, more thoughtful. And then Daniel saw him. The man who raised Michael, tall, well-dressed, laughing with confidence, one arm around both Michael and her. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct in him told him to turn and disappear again. But this time he didn't. With careful steps, he approached one of the nearby tables set up with congratulatory gifts and cards. When no one was looking, he gently placed the small box down among the others, deliberately, quietly, like placing a flower on a grave. Then he stepped back and left without a sound. He crossed the street again, heart hammering. From the other side of the road, partially hidden behind a tree, he waited. Minutes passed. Then Michael walked over to the table, rummaging through some of the boxes and envelopes. His hand paused on Daniel's gift. He picked it up slowly, reading the engraving. His eyebrows pinched together. He turned the box in his hands, confused. "Who gave this?" he asked aloud. The others nearby shook their heads. "Wasn't me," one friend said. "It wasn't there earlier," said another. Daniel saw the way Michael's face changed as he opened the box and took out the old silver watch. He read the engraving on the back. His lips moved silently. Then he looked up, across the street, right where Daniel was standing. Their eyes met again. Only this time, it wasn't a passing glance. It was a stare, frozen. The kind of moment that feels like the whole world has stopped breathing. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. Michael didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the man in the shadows. And Daniel? He didn't know what to do. Part of him wanted to run. Another part wanted to drop to his knees and beg to be seen, to be known, to be forgiven for a disappearance he never chose. But he didn't do either. He lifted his hand, a small, hesitant wave. Not a greeting, a goodbye, a silent one. Then, he turned and walked away down the sidewalk. Behind him, Michael still stood there, gripping the box, heart racing, unable to explain what he had just felt. He didn't say anything to his mother or stepfather, not yet. He just held that watch in his palm, warm from his own skin, and watched the old man walk away until he disappeared behind the trees. Something about it felt too real to be random, too painful to be meaningless. That night, as the house filled with laughter and relatives, Michael quietly slipped into his room and stared at the box again. He held the watch to his chest. Then, he picked up his phone and opened the internet. He searched Daniel Pierce. Missing in action. Iceland Sam. What he found made his hands tremble. A photo, blurred. A younger version of the man he saw today. Same eyes, same jaw, same presence. Under the photo, presumed dead. But if that was true, then who had been standing across the road? And why did it feel like he had just met someone he'd been missing his entire life? Michael couldn't sleep that night. The house was filled with soft voices, the clatter of dishes, the low hum of celebration winding down. But in his room, the air was still and thick with questions. The watch sat on his desk beside an old shoebox, where he kept childhood souvenirs. He had opened the box from the ceremony again and again, running his thumb over the engraving, rereading the words as if they might change. "To my son, for the day you become a man. Dad." The handwriting was unfamiliar, yet strangely careful, as though the person writing it had imagined this moment for a very long time. The photo he had found online of Daniel Pierce, the man declared missing in action over 20 years ago, lingered in his mind. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was something deeper, something in the eyes. The man across the street today had looked at him like he mattered more than anything, like he had been waiting to see him grow up his entire life. Michael didn't know what to do, what to believe. He loved his father, John, the man who raised him, who had never once let him feel incomplete. But deep inside, something had shifted, not in betrayal, in wonder. At 2:14 a.m., then Michael quietly got dressed and stepped outside. The summer air was warm and heavy. Cicadas buzzed from the trees. He walked down the sidewalk, the small silver watch in his palm. It's ticking louder now than it had been all day. He didn't know where he was going, only that his feet pulled him toward the old park, the one near the high school where people sometimes wandered to be alone. He didn't expect anyone to be there. But as he reached the edge of the field, he saw him, sitting on the bench beneath the old oak tree, jacket folded beside him, hands resting on his knees, staring into the dark like someone lost in time. Daniel didn't react at first. Then, as Michael stepped closer, he slowly turned his head. Their eyes met again, but this time Michael didn't look away. He stood there in the pale streetlight, watching the man who bore his blood but not his memories. "It was you," Michael said softly, "at graduation." Daniel nodded once. "I didn't want to disturb anything," he said. "I just needed to see you. One time. Why didn't you come talk to me?" "Because I didn't know if I had the right," Daniel said. "You already have a life, a family, a father. I'm just someone who got left behind." Michael sat on the edge of the bench, staring at the ground. "They told me you died," he said, "when I was a baby. I never knew anything else." "I know," Daniel whispered. "I saw you once, years ago. You were maybe 6. You were riding your bike in the driveway. I watched from down the street. Your mom was laughing. Your stepdad was helping you balance. I couldn't take that away. I didn't want to be the crack in your foundation." Michael was quiet. Then he reached into his pocket and held out the watch. "I found your name, the date. You planned to give this to me." "I did," Daniel said. "Before the war. Before everything." Michael looked at it again. "Why now?" "Because you deserve to see the man I became," Daniel said. "Even if just once. Even if from far away. I needed you to know that someone out there never stopped loving you." The words landed heavy. Michael clenched his jaw. His voice was tight when he said, "I don't know what to do with this. I have a dad, but I also feel like I'm sitting next to part of myself I didn't know was missing." Daniel looked away, his throat tightening. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just needed to give you something back. Even if it's just the truth." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't cold. It was filled with everything unspoken. Years lost, birthdays missed, milestones only imagined. After a long pause, Michael asked, "Where do you go now?" Daniel let out a quiet breath. "I don't know. I never really came back for me. Just for this. For you." Michael stood. He looked down at the man who had risked everything just to be near. "You don't have to disappear again. I'm not sure there's a place for me anymore." "That's not your decision alone," Michael said. Then, more quietly, "Would you meet my dad? The one who raised me?" Daniel hesitated. "If he'd allow it?" "He might," Michael said. "He's a good man. But I think he'd understand." Daniel looked up at him, eyes wide and glassy. "You don't owe me anything, Michael." "I'm not doing it for you," Michael replied. "I'm doing it for me." They walked back in silence, the night still warm, the streets still empty. One step at a time. One step toward something uncertain, maybe painful, maybe healing. The lights of home glowed dimly in the distance. And for the first time in decades, Daniel didn't feel like a ghost. He felt seen. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. Enough to take one more step forward. Enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still a place for him in a world that had learned to live without him.